In this video, we're going to take a look at how to solve a quadratic equation using a method called completing the square. Alright, so first of all, what do we mean by a square? Well, this would be a binomial squared. So when we square it, we're going to get what's called a perfect square trinomial. Now the way to spot one of those is you just go ahead and look at this number here, and if that number is a perfect square, as in you multiply one number times itself to get that number, then you may be looking at a perfect square trinomial. In this case we are, and let's see where that comes from. Okay, we draw a little box, we got x plus 3 times x plus 3. Now what we're going to do is take away the last square. What does that do to the trinomial? That takes away the 9. That's where the 9 would go, right? Let's fill in the rest of the boxes. X squared plus 3x, that's where the 6x comes from, plus blank, right? And that's why we say 9 completes the square, right? If we go ahead and put that 9 back where it goes, then we could factor this trinomial now, and it would factor to x plus 3 times x plus 3. We've completed the square. Alright, let's look at another example. So to complete the square this time, what we're going to do is take half of b, in this case negative 20, and square it. So what's half of negative 20? And then what's that squared? Boom, 100. Notice I didn't even have to decide what the sign was going to be. Anything squared is positive. So the third term of a perfect square trinomial is always positive. Alright. Now as far as why we need this skill, let's look at an example so we can see how it might be used to solve a problem. Alright, so the first thing is, take a look at this, and before we complete the square, that's what the screen's telling me to do here. Before we complete the square, let's think about, could we just factor this straight out? Okay, and so let's take a look and see x squared, if we just did x squared minus 6x minus 21 equals 0, are there two numbers that multiply to 21, or negative 21, and add up to negative 6? Think about that for a minute first, because if you can just factor it, then of course, just go ahead and factor it. In this case, there aren't two numbers that work. We got 7 and 3, we got 21 and 1. Neither of those are going to give us negative 6. So, let's go ahead and get rid of that, and we'll complete the square. That's our next option, is completing the square. So, we complete the square on x squared minus 6x by leaving a space. 21 just stays over there, that's where it belongs. And the question is, what's half of negative 6 squared? So that's negative 3 squared, which is 9. Now, we can't just add 9 to the left side of the equal sign without also adding 9 to the right side. So don't forget, that's the most important step. If you do something to one side, you always have to do it to the other side. Now, all we did there was we just factored. So x squared minus 6x plus 9 factors to x minus 3 squared. And then 21 plus 9 is 30. All right. Now, after we have that, the final step is just to square root both sides. So when you take a square root on the left, you're left with x minus 3. Take a square root on the right, you got square root 30. Now, I didn't write that as some decimal because it's not going to be a nice whole number. It's going to be some non-repeating decimal. So let's continue. X minus 3 equals square root 30. That's where we're at. The last thing is you're going to add 3 to both sides, right? Well, you got to remember that square root 30 can be positive or negative. So when you add 3, you got to add it to the positive version and the negative version. Now, if you prefer to write those as decimals, you can go ahead and do that. Just be prepared if you're looking at a multiple choice test to see your answers written this way and, be able to convert back and forth. Here's one for you to try. X squared plus 10x minus 40 equals 0. Go ahead and solve for x.